The program is an NBC exclusive video interview. I found the interview on NBCnews.com. In this interview, Matt Lauer interviews Ryan Locke. Locke claimed he was robbed while traveling around Rio with three other swimmers, James Fagan, Gunnar Bentz, and Jet Conger. What actually happened is that Ryan Locke vandalized a gas station while he and his teammates were traveling around the city. They were actually caught by an armed security staff who demanded payment for the damage they had caused. Locke has issued an apology now for the incident, and he talks about it in this interview. Initially, he had claimed that the armed security officer had taken a gun and put it to his head and told to hand over the money. But what actually happened is the security guard wanted money for repairs so that Mr. Locke could pay for everything he had broken. But he lied about it and it got way out of control. So at the start of the interview, Ryan Locke states that he was waiting for all of his teammates to return to American Soul before he went public and did an interview. Matt Lauer states at the beginning of the interview that he wants to play devil's advocate. And if Locke had set the record straight earlier, he probably could have prevented his teammates' passport from being impounded and prevented a lot of other problems. In doing this, the interviewer creates space for Mr. Locke to speak more about the incident. He goes on to say that he was intoxicated, but that's no excuse, and that he had over-exaggerated his story. Initially, Mr. Locke had communicated to Mr. Lauer that they were victims in the incident, that being him and his teammates. Matt Lauer refers to a moment that he had talked to Mr. Locke in the past, and Mr. Locke had said that they were just total victims in the situation, but police would disagree with that, later calling them vandals, not victims. Ryan Locke then proceeds to say, after he's called out about that by Matt Lauer, that it's how you want to look at it, mentioning that there are many angles one can look at the situation, and one of those could possibly be robbery. Later on in the interview, Matt Lauer breaks down the incident and gets Locke to more or less admit that it was more of a negotiation than a robbery. Mr. Lauer, he did a great job of asking the right questions and keeping the interview in the right direction, the direction he wanted to take it. He was able to get a lot of information out of Mr. Locke, information that wouldn't have come out otherwise. He just stayed persistent in his questioning and phrased things in certain ways that allowed Ryan Locke to truly communicate himself and tell what kind of actually happened. The question I would add is, what lesson did you ultimately learn from this experience? I'd like to hear what he'd have to say about that and see if there's anything in particular that this has taught him. He's got a lot of work to do.